Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Policy Review Committee meeting. Today is August 12th, 2026, and it is 1:05 p.m. In attendance are Mrs. Sharon Felton and Mr. Mark Bowensteel. Okay, and first we have an election of the chair. Do I have any nominations? Mr. Bowensteel?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Chair Weems.
Okay, any other nominations? Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of Ms. Weems continuing as chair of the PRC signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I do want to point out, if you printed your package yesterday, we changed the order on the agenda. We updated it online today and the copies in the back. The only thing we switched was we had adoption of the minutes before adoption of the agenda, and we realized we probably should do adoption of the agenda next. So you've just completed your election of chair. So number 4 will read adoption of the agenda, and then adoption of minutes. And you'll see it, there's a notation in there that we just switched the order of them.
Okay, thank you.
That was uploaded online too.
Okay, and I had a quick question too about the agenda. Is A, policy 347, new construction, is that 347 or 374? It is listed in the agenda as 347, but on the actual sheet, it is 374. So those two numbers have been switched, so which is correct?
374 would be correct.
Okay,
we
so
need
we
to
will
note that.
change that, colleagues, on the agenda. I'm going to amend that to 374. It's just those numbers were accidentally changed on the agenda, but it's correct on the pages. Okay, so with those amendments, to move the minutes and the agenda, and then also to correct the policy 3-74, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Bowensteel, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. Okay, and then do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Felton to adopt the minutes, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you, and Ms. Linetti, we will start with policy 374.
Yes, ma'am. 374 is in our business and non-instructional operations section. Again, this is 374. It currently reads new construction, additions, alterations, naming, or parts of, or facilities, parts thereof, commemorative displays. As you know, last night we went ahead and we the school board appointed the ad hoc committee for the renaming in honor of Betty F. Williams. While looking at that, we realized that potentially with the Betty F. Williams site, where it may not actually be a building on there, it might be the grounds, it might be multiple buildings on there. We thought we needed to probably fix this policy depending on what the outcome of the ad hoc committee is going to do. So you'll see some changes. I don't think it's significant, but we're going to go through some changes. So section A would be naming of school board buildings, grounds, or facilities. And the change, it is the school board's policy that no school board building, grounds, or facilities shall be named after an individual or an organization. For purpose of clarification, this policy includes, but is not limited to, parts or subparts of buildings such as gymnasiums, auditoriums, cafeterias, libraries, classrooms, hallways, laboratories, and any other internal areas of the school of a school board owned, leased, or operated instructional. We would add building, ground, or facilities. Then we're going to take out exceptions may be authorized for the school board, because we're going to make that its own section. Then we're going to go to B, which would be naming of exterior grounds or facilities for sponsors. This is a slightly different concept. So you're going to see down in, I want to say the fourth sentence, at the end of this page, the school board reserves the right without cause to deny the request to name exterior grounds or facilities after a sponsor and or to remove or alter the name of a sponsor. So we don't have a lot of those situations, but remember we used to have the pouring rights for Pepsi. We'd do that. Occasionally we get sponsors. So that's just clarifying on that page. Then we're going to move to C. We'll alter the name to be existing buildings, grounds, and facilities, and it would read existing buildings, grounds, or facilities, or parts thereof that have been previously named, and we would take out prior to the last amended date of the policies. And it would pick up with may continue with such name until such time as the school board votes to change the name or remove the name. This applies to replacements or portions of replacements of existing buildings, grounds, or facilities. The school board may transfer an existing name to a replacement, renovation, or a new building, grounds, or facility, and the school board reserves the right without cause to change, alter, or transfer the name of existing buildings, grounds, or facilities. We thought that'll help us with the Betty F. Williams because you may be moving that name to another building or to a grounds. We would not change section D. In section E, we're going to make that the exceptions. So we read E, exceptions. The school board reserves the right to make exceptions without cause to this policy and any supporting regulations. So it's not a very significant change, but that we think this will give more options, particularly for the ad hoc committee to do what they need to do. And those are the recommendations for this policy.
Thank you, Ms. Linetti. Do we have any comments or concerns or questions, Ms. Felton?
No, I'd just like to say, Ms. Attorney Linetti, I do appreciate your bringing this policy up, doing the things, the changes that we're getting ready to make with the Betty F. Williams acknowledgement. But is it necessary, or does it pick up in the way where we, the school board, will create ad hoc committees? Is that necessary to put this in this policy, or would it be something, just more wording?
I think the ad hoc committees falls under bylaw 128, which allows that for that. And then this was really limited, and it had to do with many years ago situations where we had people offering to pay money, and we wanted to Camel and Eddie High School, and you didn't want to have to name it like that, so we wanted to protect that right to do that. Recently, I saw a situation where Cesar Chavez High School in California realized that they had just named the school, and all of a sudden came out the information about how he had abused a bunch of girls. That was another thing we were concerned about, is having some of the names would be someone that it turns out would not be appropriate for us to have names on. So we're trying to protect that. But I don't think the ad hoc committee affects it. I think that remains the priority of the school board to determine when you need an ad hoc committee. And that would be under bylaw 128.
And to state that again, you said that information or the explanation is in bylaw 1-28? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Linetti, the only comment I have is I'm not sure why we need E, because the school board can always has the right with 2/3 vote to change a policy. I mean, is this on all of our policies?
No, but I thought in this case, since it sort of said you could do this, that in those cases where you wanted to override, because it really says, you saw at the beginning, that you will not name it after an individual. But there might be a situation here where you're going to possibly transfer the name of Betty F. Williams to something else. I want to make sure if anybody's questioning
so
whether
it's
that was
for that
yeah.
specific reason. Okay.
Obviously, you have the right to do that, but we
Yeah.
just made that clear. There might be a good reason to honor somebody, but we didn't want to be in a situation where you felt like you had to honor somebody because you occasionally find out things about the people years later, and now you're stuck in a situation. So we wanted to make sure that that was very clear, that you had that right to override whatever the decision was.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Bonesteel, did you have anything on this one? Okay, so if there's no further concerns or questions, do I have a motion to move policy 374 onto the school board?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so this 3-74 will move on to the school board for a vote. All right, now we have policy 432, employee association. I would like to add that the three of us got all these policies, and they were not redlined. So I've dug up old policies that were rewritten and with the red line, and so we've been kind of, all three of us have shared a little frustration about having to go back and forth between all these policies to try to compare them, because it was very hard at the time to compare them.
Your emailed version and what was online had the
Yeah.
red line. It was what we copied for you last night that
Yeah.
didn't appear to have the red line. Didn't we apologize for that?
Yeah, that's okay. Okay.
This is a draft that came out of, we discussed last time that we was interested in looking at this policy again. Human Resources worked on drafting some recommendations. Again, it's just a draft because we didn't have specifics as to what you wanted on this point. So at this point, these are drafts. I will tell you one section that we had to work on, there was a change in the law, and you're going to see this in a later policy, having to do with professional leave that had to be moved to another policy on there. But they tried to incorporate what they thought you had directed them to do. Again, this is just draft language for you to work with. You're free to alter or change any of the language here. You will notice in section B, when a significant area, we did not really have definitions before. I think we had employer association somewhere else, but we did not have a section that dealt specifically with these other definitions, and those were added to this section. So again, I'm free to, if you want to go paragraph by paragraph, we can do that. But again, this is just a draft for you to start working with. So under
Okay,
sections.
yeah, I'll just start off. I was kind of surprised when I read this draft, to tell you the truth, because I know that last meeting, I brought up concerns about association business being done during lunchtime, because teachers had reached out to me and kind of felt awkward that during lunch, they were approached, some association members were in the lunchroom, and they were asked to, I guess, take a picture of a barcode and send it to school board. They were asked to get their picture taken, which they denied. They were given chocolate. Anyway, so they just kind of thought that it was an awkward situation. So my concern was to make sure that policy was being followed, because our current policy, right now has a definition of employee association, but it also has, in the very first section, it says with prior approval, the principal and employee association representative may confer with an individual association member on school premises before or after work hours. So, our current policy is not being followed. And I know that we have, in the editor's note of both the redraft and our current policy, it says on October 1999, the school board passed a resolution authorizing the superintendent to suspend association privileges if there's a violation. Do we have, where is that resolution? Do we have a copy of that resolution, or?
There's a link
Where
if you're
was it?
online, but we can get you a copy of that.
Okay, if you could give me,
Can we print that off right now? Let's see, I'll see if I can put it up, but if you were online at the policy, you can link into that
yeah,
resolution.
okay. So, so my concern last time was that the policy was being violated, because I don't want teachers to feel awkward during their lunchtime. And now the policy is rewritten that appears that that's gonna be okay. So anyway, but when we get there, we'll get to it. But I was just confused because it didn't seem like this writing, this draft addressed. I know Mr. Bowen still brought up some concerns too. So, I was a little surprised at the draft. I'm not sure who wrote the draft. I don't know if anybody's, but it wasn't anything close to what I intended it to be. But I guess we will just go through this, do you want to go through it section by section? Because I've got a lot of comments, and we will, so employee association, the right to form. I'm looking now, I do have the red version, and I'm looking at our current policy. So the right to form, join, et cetera, the superintendent shall ensure the right of all employees freely and without fear of penalty to form, join, assist, or be represented by an employee association, or to refrain from such activity. The school board shall continue to exercise unilaterally its final managerial authority. And that seems to be the same for both. Do we have any comments on A, right to form? Ms. Felton, do you have any changes or comments or anything? Okay, good, okay. So it looks like, yay, we all agree on the first part. Okay, so I think we can accept that. Okay, I'm gonna put a big check there. Okay, B is, what you've added quite a bit to. Let's see here. Okay, so B, you've added many definitions. In the current policy, B has employee association definition. An employee association is defined as an organization comprised of and organized by only employees or retirees of Virginia Beach City Public School. And that's what, yeah, that's the current policy. Thank you. The draft employee association means an organization comprised of and organized by only employees or retirees of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. So the only difference there is you put means instead of defined. Okay, so, and I think for some back history, when was this rewritten? This is the 5-year update.
Yeah, the employee association one was added, I remember Mrs. Anderson asked that to be added, and I want to say, I think it's a 2018 one. That's when governance was looking at this originally, and then came to PRC, but I remember that was something that Mrs. Anderson had brought this policy forward, and that's how the definition was to limit it only to that, because she felt there were other groups coming in at the time that didn't have the background, like American Federation of Teachers, something that didn't necessarily have a presence in Virginia Beach, and they felt very strongly about it. So that was the definition we added, and I believe that was 2018 when we did that.
Okay, so we added the definition, like you said, yeah, I remember Ms. Anderson, I think, was chair at that time of the policy, because there was fear of other organizations coming in. Okay, so, I mean, so we've pretty much created a monopoly. Is that an accurate statement, that only one viewpoint can be heard?
Well, you could have a bus driver, I think at the time we had a bus driver association and another group. But yeah, if you had a group that allowed like citizens into it, or a national group that had people from all over the country involved in it, that would not necessarily meet the definition here, as you put it.
Mr. Bowenfield?
So can we change that definition?
Yeah, it's your policy, absolutely. There's no state law requirement to this. This
Right,
was a
because like
definition you made up.
You know, the first one I read it, my first question was like, why? And as Chair Weems said, seems like to me it's kind of a monopoly on who's able to come in and who's able to say what. And so I'm interested in changing that, and I'm also curious about all these new meanings. I don't think that they were there in the original ones,
With a current one.
with the
Yeah,
current ones,
one.
the current thing, where we have the associate representative meetings, non-duty time. That seems kind of, I don't know.
Okay,
Not
well,
all there,
let's stick with this first definition. For the purpose of this policy, the draft is employee association means an organization comprised of and organized by only employees or retirees of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. So before this rewrite in 2018, what did it say? Did it just say,
I'm not sure we had a definition.
you just
prior to
didn't have,
that time
it just said associations?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, see if we've gotten one, but I don't believe we had a definition for then.
Okay, yeah, I'm just concerned about having a monopoly and not being willing to have other groups and just getting one viewpoint. I'm not really sure why we're scared of other viewpoints, but, okay, Ms. Felton, what about you?
Oh, I'm trying to understand and get my head around the word that we're using now, monopoly, as far as the group is concerned. Because when I think about other groups that we have, like PTA is here as well. So are you stating that we allowing only one group to come in, and you want to see other groups to come in, have that benefit of coming in and being a part of the system?
Well, PTA is not
Okay.
Yeah, PTA is
But I
not
just
in
used it
this
for an
definition.
example,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, we have a variety, yeah, we have so many
what I'm
different
at,
groups coming
so
in.
what I'm asking is, if you're saying we're using it as a monopoly, are we gonna then create criteria, who come in and how they're coming in, if you say you want to rewrite this definition? Because it's explanatory to me, and I do appreciate what they're saying, that they are for the employee, by the employees of Virginia Beach Public Schools. That make it more, relevant to who's addressing our individuals. So I just like to know from my two colleagues, when they say monopoly, what are they opening the door to? Who are they opening it to, and what do they want to see in this definition? How they want it changed?
Well, I know that it was changed because there was another group forming and that ideologically was probably a little bit different than some liked. And so I just want to make sure that we're fair and not, you know, not causing one group to be able to have the same rights as other groups. That's all, and I'm just asking is that what we've done here, in your opinion, or
I
you
know at
okay?
this time there was a bus driver association that seemed to be primarily Virginia Beach City Public School bus drivers, so they would have been allowed under this policy, which is why they didn't cite a specific organization. But there was another group that had citizens in it, and that seemed to be Mrs. Anderson's concern at that time period. So I do remember that was something that they decided that the PRC at that time decided they did not want to bring forward. So it wasn't limited to one group, it was limited to groups that only had Virginia Beach City Public School employees or retirees.
Okay, and what are those groups now? I mean,
I'm
it
not
appears
sure-
that the bus drivers, from what you're saying, I'm hearing that they're no longer, do they not have
I've not heard much from them, I'm not aware that they're still an active group, there, so, but at that time period, they're a small group that appeared to be all Virginia Beach City Public School employees.
Okay, and then what other group is there that this is now, like, what groups are we talking about with this definition? That have these rights?
I'm guessing the Virginia Beach Education Association meets the criteria. I'm not aware of other groups if we have them. I believe, I've heard over the years that there was groups possibly forming, but I'm not aware that they've actually come into existence.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my concern is that we're not leaving anybody out or any other altering viewpoint if they do form and, and so this does seem like it's written for one organization.
It was written so that you could only have been an employee of Virginia Beach City
Yeah.
Public Schools to be able to participate in one of these groups.
Well, just for clarification, as Mrs. Weems is speaking, if they're suggesting, just for clarification for the public, and where we're trying to get with this, maybe we should investigate in looking at who they're referring to and how they want to come in, because it does read only, and I circled that word, only employees or retirees of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. So just for clarification and for looking at more existing groups that they're speaking to, maybe we should go back and we should see the groups that they're asking to come in. Do they fall on that criteria, or do they set a positive purpose for our employees? Because what they're saying, they're using the word monopoly and unfair, and I just want to understand that this policy be written so that it won't be a monopoly or unfair. But I do know that I do feel that employees like to be represented, have a representative speaking for them and on their behalf.
And I will tell you at the time, Mrs. Anderson was also concerned that because retirees use our benefit system and has some interest in some of our services on there, that if they wanted to form a group, so they wouldn't be current employees, but because they were concerned about their benefits, she wanted that opportunity. That's why retirees was added into that.
Okay, well, could you, I'm gonna write questions down, and could you write these down too? Could you, come back with exactly what groups that we have now and find out about the custodial group. I think there used to be, I don't know if there was somebody else besides the bus drivers, and I can't
I want to
remember.
say it was a school psychologist, or there was like a secretary administrative assistance.
Okay, this is a task that I want, Ms. Woodhouse, this would probably fall under you. Can you bring us back any groups that form, or, that have a group, that would fall under this category?
And I would add to
yeah.
Ms. Williams that if possible, is it possible to go back and see what groups did try or wanted to become? Is it in the way of going back trying to find those groups that applied or that asked for permission to be part of the employee association?
I don't know that we had an application process for that. The best we might be able to do is to see where dues or something was taken out, but that may be the only area. The only thing I can think of, Miss Woodhouse, and you may have been Chief Human Resource Officer at the time, when we used to meet with some of the groups beforehand. I don't know if there were any groups, but that would have been a long time ago, like 10 years or more ago. I don't.
That would have been before my time in HR, and I'm thinking you're talking about doing the employee input
Yes,
process. It was my understanding, I think at that time it was bus drivers, and teacher associations. I do know we have principal and assistant principal associations with our, VBA, SSP, VBA, ESP, so we have those associations as well.
Okay.
To my knowledge, they don't apply to you for certification. They may have asked for deduction, but don't take a lot of deductions, so we just have to look back to see if there's any other way. It's not, they've never asked to be permission to form for the school division, so the school division wouldn't have that.
Okay, and that might, Ms. Phil, that might be a conversation to have, like, in the future, is there some sort of process? That if you're a formed group, is there a process that or do you just ask permission to go into a school? I mean, that might be a conversation to have once you come back with that
We'd
data.
have to
So any
investigate
groups that would qualify, in the past or recently, because I know we have had one a few years ago
did.
that formed, yeah, okay.
And we did, just for clarification, the language that's being used about my colleagues' monopoly and being fair or unfair, I'd just like to know if they know, or anyone know that someone wanted to become a part of an association in the Virginia Beach Public School and they were not allowed, and why. Somewhere, this conversation had to start or come from somewhere with this policy, with the way we're homing in on the meaning of employee association. So I'm just curious, and I'm hoping that maybe someone could think about, and if the public is hearing, yes, I did apply, but I was not, or I consulted our ask, and we were not allowed because of these criteria. That was happening. And if I'm not mistaken, this might be far off the track, but we did a policy concerning certain groups coming into the public schools, and that might have been under the one of our political policies about political groups coming in. We thoroughly went through that as well. If you could I would like to see that again, that policy that we worked on. We worked on that in detail. I remember. So I'm just concerned with a couple of my colleagues bringing that. It is concerning about using the wording monopoly and fair and unfair. So.
Well, I mean, our lawyer just stated that it was rewritten because Ms. Anderson was concerned about another group coming in.
Right.
So that's why it was originally
And if she
rewritten.
knows that group,
Yeah.
I would definitely know what that was and why.
I'd have to go back and pull the notes. I did go online to see if we had the prior version. It just happens to be the year before we were putting them online, so we'd have to go back to
Okay,
the
if we
written
could
file
get
to
that.
find it.
Okay, so if we could get those groups in the prior version, that would be great. Okay, so I think we'll just, kind of hold on for that section, but I think we need to keep going to give them the task, because if they're gonna bring it back, they need to have the, they need to have direction, how to bring this back. Okay, did you have anything else to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I don't recall using the word unfair, and perhaps monopoly might not have been the correct word to use. It was just of a lack of a better word, but my main thing was just the concerning of it just seemed like it was just limited. I don't know of any groups personally that are looking to come in, but the way it's written, it doesn't really matter because unless they're employees, they're not gonna be able to come in anyway. And I just think that, for where we're at, that we should be open to see, not just accept anybody, but to be open to have other organizations that have a viewpoint.
Okay, all right, so we have, what Ms. Linetti has, given us is some other definitions. Association representative means an employee or retiree authorized to act on behalf of an employee association. Meeting means a gathering in person or by electronic means of two or more members of an employee association for the purpose of conducting association business. Non-duty time means time outside an employee's assigned working hours, including the time before and after assigned hours and any duty-free meal period. Non-duty time does not include paid working time or the instructional day. And then the last definition is designated location means the physical posting space or electronic equivalent that the principal identifies at each school for the posting of employee association information under section 3. So these definitions have been added. Wait, let me get my, I'm having to flip that with the versions. Okay, so Ms. Linetti, all these definitions have been added, the ones I just read.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
There's suggestions.
and why did you feel like you needed to?
I
add
didn't
these?
add these, I didn't draft this, it's kind of
Okay,
human resources,
so why did we need these? Because they weren't in,
I'm sorry.
they're not
No,
in
I can
our
hear-
current policy.
Correct, and these were just suggestions based on some of the dialogue that took place at the PRC during the last meeting, trying to get an understanding of what some of the language meant. But these are nothing more than suggestions. So if it's very clear, the way it's written now, that works. But I do believe that some of the conversation around the meeting, I think there was some conversation around the new education's orientation and what a meeting was, and it wasn't a meeting. So some of that was captured during the last meeting. So if it's not where you all were going, these are just suggestions, but just based on some of the conversation. And so it wasn't meant to change, it was just meant to give some suggestions.
Okay.
And that was it. So it doesn't have to be there.
Okay, so in the current policy, B only has the definition, employee association definition. This suggestion is adding these, I guess, for clarification. Do we have any comments on these? Do they need to be there? Is it,
My opinion, I feel that it is sometimes necessary to have clarification of what do you mean by those things, and I think the breakdown is very explanatory. I like it. I can digest it, especially when it's at non-duty time, meaning times outside employee assigned working hours, including the time before and after assigned hours and any duty-free meal period. Non-duty time does not include paid working time or the instruction day. And something that need to be clarified with when, where, and what is necessary or appropriate for these groups and employees. I think that appealed to me a little bit more than any of them that does. And I also like the designated location. Means a physical posting space or electronic equivalent that the principal identify at each school for the posting of an employee association and information under section 3. I think that's important as well. I served on a student leaders group for the Virginia Beach Historic Preservation, and historical, and the students were not allowed, they had to have designated places and a sponsor before they could post anything, anywhere. So I think that sets up a good premises of what is appropriate and where it should be, not just all over the school.
Yeah, and that's in our current policy. I
Yeah.
mean, you took this, I mean, we do have, and it's later on, what the location is and the specifications. My question is, and it's actually under 3 as well, what is the electronic posting space? It says the electronic equivalent of a, posting space, and then in 3, it's electronic posting space. I don't know what that means.
So the conversation that took place was, I believe it said bulletin boards, previously. And so in the digital land and world, there are electronic, applications, or could be marquees or any, some type of electronic, but, to get away from a bulletin board per se.
Yes, we did have that, okay.
We
so-
did
yeah,
have that
yeah,
conversation, so trying to incorporate, and again, that can be taken out, but trying to get away from the, it just said bulletin board. And so, how
Okay, so
frequently?
so this would be like if we go to all the like bulletin boards that are the electronic ones or something like that. This
Correct.
is not like an email address or anything.
Just to expand on that a little bit as well, when I saw the policy, many of our schools now have the TV monitors with the scrolling announcements. The principals have newsletters that they send out to their staff. Even I did that way back, but I'm seeing in more and more of our schools, when we go into schools now, that they're doing the TV screens with the scrolling announcements. Matter of fact, we added one to the front of our space here as well, where we can scroll different things. So when I
Okay.
captured that, that's what I also assumed, that people are kind of moving away more from just the paper type staple up bulletin boards, that they're also using the TV screens and other electronic means.
Okay,
And
yeah,
where are these actually located in school?
It varies school by school, so it could be in the front of the office area where staff frequently go in and out. I've been at schools where they actually have them on the hallways, especially some of your larger schools, or say schools that have multiple floor levels, like a VB. I can't remember if they had it on every floor. So it really depends on the school and their purchasing of electronic devices means, and where it is that they wish to put it for scrolling.
Okay, then students would have access to see this as well, right?
They
Right.
could not not in terms of how this policy is written, Mr. Bowensteel. So if they're,
yeah, and that's under 3.
yeah, that's under 3. So if they were gonna post this message, it could not be in the main foyer. They'd have to designate that in a
Okay, that's what my
employee-specific
concern was.
space, yeah, and that's outlined here in the policy.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's it, that's,
Thank you. I was
Yeah.
gonna ask that question. Thank you.
yeah, that's later on in 3. Okay, so that's just like if the bulletin board goes to a digital bulletin board, the principal would still just say, this is your space, and, or whatever. Okay. Okay. This is it.
Did we go over non-duty time?
Well, we're just going over the definitions right now. Ms. Felton likes all the definitions. She thinks it clarifies. And then I was just asking about the clarification of the designated location. I didn't know if that meant emails, but they have clarified that that meant a certain space designated, whether it be a bulletin board or a digital bulletin board. So, do you have any comments about any of the other definitions?
Not yet.
Okay, so a meeting here is two people discussing association business. Is the definition here. Meeting means a gathering in person or by electronic means, or 2 people emailing of 2 or more members association for the purpose of conducting business, association business. Okay. All right, so we will, and I know that these are brought up later in the policy also, if you have any questions later, just like the digital, designated location is brought up later. Okay. So we're on number C, use of school facilities for employee association business, excuse me. Employee associations are authorized to use school facilities for association business as set forth below. 1, with the prior approval of the principal, an employee association representative may confer with an individual association member on school premises during the non-duty time of the representative and the member, is the way that it's written now. It was written, they may confer with an individual association member on school premises either before or after such members' established work hours. So that's a big change, and, yeah, that kind of is not what I was looking for, because I'm really concerned for hearing from teachers that were put in awkward positions in the lunch, while they were eating lunch. I would like to keep it as our current policy, which reads, with the approval of the principal, and employee association representative may confer with an individual association member on school premises either before or after such members' established work hours. I like the way our current policy reads it, which actually Ms. Anderson rewrote it that way. So, any comments on that? 'Cause I think that a teacher should be able to enjoy his or her lunch, especially if they're not a member, without being, without business being conducted
But-
at that time, at lunch.
But I think it specifies that it's with another association member, not just any teacher at the school.
Right. Yeah, and that's
So-
what the,
And
that's
that's
what the
what
current
my
policy-
concern comes into, is because I've talked to a few teachers. I go out a couple schools once in a while, but their thought is why they're not a member of this certain association, and why are they being recruited, so to speak, and also, though I like the old way, because some teachers could be working a half a day, so that means that they could actually, if they're on non-duty time, be holding meetings during school hours. That's the way I read it.
I haven't thought, I didn't think about that. Okay, so Mr. Bowenstiel and I like the current policy as written. Ms. Felton, do you like the current policy, or the way that?
I'm debating, I'm looking at it because further down is where I have my concerns, and I don't want to overstate
Okay,
anything, so,
you want to save it?
yeah, I'm gonna save it all and just
Okay,
without knowing.
okay, all right, so,
Madam,
yes.
I'm so sorry. And the thought was just for suggestions for you all,
Yeah.
and certainly, absolutely. And I know we are referring to teachers, but not all employees are teachers. And so when we say employee associations, there are exempt and non-exempt employees. So I do appreciate asking what groups that we have to come back with
Yeah.
you all, but I think the conversation is geared towards teachers, and the policy doesn't say teacher association, it
Right.
says employee association. So I think
Thank you, yes.
that's where by no means, but I just wanted to clarify that that's why some of the suggestions were there, and certainly we are capturing what you all are saying and thinking, and we can work with Mrs. Linetti. But when you get down to some of the language and the concerns that you all may have, if you would just kindly just understand that it was coming from a place of all employees and not just instructional staff.
Oh, definitely,
Thank
definitely,
you.
thank you. And that's what, and the current one does say employee. I mean, it says that all through it, so thank you, yeah. Okay, so with that first one, 1A, two of us are preferring the current policy. And, we're gonna hear from Ms. Felton in a minute. Okay, 2, an employee association may hold meetings of its members on school premises provided that A, written request for the use of school premises is submitted to the principal at least 24 hours in advance. B, the request is approved. C, the meeting is not held during the working hours of the participating employees or the operating hours of the facility being used. And D, the employee association agrees to pay any customary charges that may be assessed for custodial services and utilities. Okay, and that differs, just the main difference is in the current policy, a written request for the use of school is submitted 24 hours, so that's the same. The request is approved, that's the same. In the current policy, it says the meeting is not held during the regular work hours of the facility being used. This is changed, it's not held during the working hours of the participating employees or the operating hours of the facility being used. Isn't that the same thing? Okay. Yeah.
It is. It just actually clarified it a little bit more to remind folks that it cannot be during the working hours of the employee. Because although our facilities might be used from, say, 8 to 4, we still have second and third shift employees as well. So just ensuring that although school operating hours, might be 8 to 4, we have staff that work until 11 p.m. We have security staff that work
Yeah,
all night.
night.
So this actually clarified it a little bit more to say not only during the facility hours, but also the hours of the employee working. So just kind of a clarification piece there.
Ms. Woodhouse, we may want to, while I'm looking at that, wouldn't that effectively prohibit any meetings? Because when the operating hours, like if like 4 o'clock until 10, 11 o'clock, would that, because is it school operating hours you want to say? Because obviously the building's open, but it may not be open to the public. So would that prohibit them from having any meetings?
Well, and you may want to go back and revisit that. It's typically been the employees' contract hours that took precedence over the use of the facilities because, we have been reminded that our facilities are open all the time, So if organizations want to use them in the evening and on the
Right.
weekends, they're open and available. So the clarification has always been around the employees' contract hours. And so, but the original one,
It says regular working hours is the
Correct.
original one.
yes,
I kind of like the original one. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, so if an association wanted to meet at 5 o'clock, with the new policy, we would have to say no because we have custodians working. Yeah, so,
correct. Or you can
Yeah.
only say the employees who are no longer on contract or hours,
Yeah.
correct.
yeah. I kind of like the current policy, but, for that one.
C struck out at me as well because you mentioned Ms. Trotman, also Ms. Woodhouse, the very things that came to mind about all employees. We have exempt and non-exempt, and we have the cafeteria workers, and we have our night shift workers. And if we are being inclusive, if we're including all of our employees, that means we're going to have to work around or show evidence that we do care about their time and that they are included in this policy as well. So often our cafeteria workers and our night shift custodians and our teachers' assistants are most often left out of the rim of what we are doing. So I hear my colleagues said what they like about the old policy, but I think this should include some way. It's such a restriction when you're setting these tight hours for those employees that cannot be involved. And I would want them to be involved with it as well. So it's a little restrictive to me for them as well. Somehow I just need for C to be redefined or re-looked at, rewritten to include those specific special hours of custodian. And sometime maybe even our bus drivers that is not there, like you said, exempt and non-exempt workers as well. It's not including them when I'm reading it the way I see it. I don't perceive it that way.
Yeah, I see some confusion on it. And we want to make sure we direct.
Absolutely, and,
So I
and
think we're
again,
saying kind of the same
absolutely.
thing. We want to make sure that we're not the way the policy is written now, rewritten.
Mrs. Williams, can you turn on your mic, please?
To me, the way the policy is rewritten now, no group can meet in our buildings. Because it's always, because there's gonna be some employees who are working there. So the current one says the regular operating, so yeah, so we need to relook at this and
Absolutely.
and come up with,
And
yeah.
absolutely, and the discussion is
It's kinda
great
confusing.
because this, for example, the school administration building is a facility. And so, when we think about all of the, school facilities and buildings, it was just for the dialogue, so we would
Right.
definitely go back. But I also think about this building as well, with the
Right.
employees in it.
Right,
It is a
right.
school facility. And so when you talk about
Exactly.
our contract hours and the work that we have to do, should meetings being held
Yeah.
during those hours. So that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
definitely, an area we will go back to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Bonesteel, did you have anything about, two, A, B, C, or D?
I think what you said, could revise it, come back.
Okay,
with
just
a little
come-
bit
okay.
more clarification.
Okay.
But that's good.
Okay, 3. Okay, so the rewrite draft is the principal at each school shall identify one designated location for the posting of employee association information. A physical posting space shall be at least 2 feet by 3 feet in size and shall be located away from student areas. An electronic posting space, if used, shall be identified by the principal for the same purpose. Employee association information shall be posted only in this designated location. So we've pretty much already discussed that. I'm fine with how the draft is written. Any other comments on that part? Okay, yay. Okay, now we're at number 4. Everybody, are we at 4? Okay, just making sure everybody's here. Okay, 4, employee associations may distribute information in staff mailboxes or by electronic mail, providing such distribution, A, is done by a member of the employee association and not by a school's administrative staff, and B, occurs only during non-duty time. Distribution by electronic mail shall comply with the school division's acceptable use requirements. Okay, anybody have any comments on number 4 or 4A, 4B?
Yes, a little. So the electronic mail, I'm assuming is the email. What resources are being used? I mean, is it school resources that are driving these emails? I mean, how are we, not, I don't know if you,
Are you talking about, is it a school email or a personal
Yeah.
email or?
And right. And so I think the discussion would have to take place, and this was only a suggestion because do all employees have mailboxes? So this was distribution in mailboxes at the schools. And so our custodians, our transportation folks, do they have mailboxes? I'm not sure. They do? I can,
No, I
it's
wouldn't
been,
say bus
but 2 hours, I've been out of a building, but it was so, and it can be, general, but it was specific to mailboxes. And I'm not certain that all employees have a, mailbox that we used to have in the schools, but I'm not certain
Okay,
that that would.
can we find that out too? Like
Sure.
if we need to get information to a custodian, a cafeteria worker, a bus driver, and say they don't have a computer, or is there a place in the office that they can get information? First, we need to find that out. Okay, and secondly, if they do, if an association or if anybody emails, are they supposed to be using their personal email or their school email if you're emailing other business? Do we have any kind of policy on that? I don't know.
No, but I will point out that many of us belong to associations like the Virginia School Board Association. That would be where you would receive your newsletters from. So if you signed up, I don't know that we go in and monitor what you're receiving on your email.
Okay, so if you sign up for any, association, I don't care what it is, do you have the option to put your personal email or your school email, and does it really matter? That's what I'm trying to get to.
The idea is if it's a professional organization, you would use your professional email, which would be your work email. So for any organization that I'm a member of, I use my vbschools.com email, because I'm only a member because of my job and my work affiliation. So that is the email that I would use.
Okay, so this is saying that, employees of associations may distribute information in mailboxes or electronic mail, and we're gonna find out exactly that. Only if you're a member, of the employee association, and it's not like, the staff in the building. And B, only during non-duty time. I still like the current policy. I think it should be, how is it put in the current policy? I think, let's see, 4B. I like it before the beginning of or after the end of a school's regular workday. I like that better, because I really do think that, your workday is, from morning to afternoon. Like, what is considered contract day? Is that the same thing as a workday from morning to afternoon, or? Or is it the set?
So that's,
Yeah.
so depending on the type of employee you are, so
Right.
non-exempt or exempt, so the work hours would be different, so that's a little bit, it is. When we, so I'd have to process a little bit more, Mrs. Wings,
Okay.
but
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
because of the non-exempt and
Right.
exempt FSLA work,
Right.
those regulations around the employee.
And we've got to make sure that we use language that, includes
Correct.
all that. But I mean, I personally like the current
Sure.
policy, language.
Absolutely.
And that's just my opinion. Do you have any, thoughts, Mr. Bonesteel, on this section 4?
Yeah, I like the way the current one is, because to me, the non-duty time is basically probably lunch for the most part. Is that what non-duty time would pretty much represent, lunchtime? So, I mean, I hear all about the teachers and how they have all this work, and that, I understand that, but they only get 30 minutes. And then it opens the door that someone can come in. I mean, from what I understand, there's a representative from the association in the school. So, I mean, why couldn't we, if someone wanted to talk to the representative on their lunchtime, they could reach out? You know what I'm saying? And that's not, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if, it's their lunchtime, if they have a question, then they want to ask the representative. But then in other words, because the way it says here, the representative could just go into any staff room and just, not that they would, I'm just saying, but it leaves that open. I mean, things, we have different people coming and going over the years, so, but that's just kind of what I'm looking at.
Okay, so if we could come back with some clarifying language in that section.
I'd like to say.
Yes, yes, Ms. Felton, sure.
Yes, thank you so much. I'd like, the term, you said contract hours. I know some teachers have to leave school at 4:00. They're still on the phone. They're still working. They're still calling. So that is a tight fix when we, try to work things around the contract hours because they go far beyond the duty of what they have to do. Also, I'd like to ask, are email assigned to all employees? I know my email was assigned to me, so all employees have an email.
I know I'm nodding my head, and our tech guy gets on us after every meeting. So yes, every employee, when you're hired, obviously you get an employee number, you get an email, because that, again, goes back to that professionalism and using your school-based email for school and or professional business. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, that's good to know. I know that our phones are becoming more applicable as we move along, but every now and then mine want to have my smartphone will be smarter than me sometimes. But my concern is, are there designated accessibility to computers to our bus drivers, cafeteria workers, the nuns, do they have access to a computer they can go to and say, let me check my computer? Do they have time? What are the hours? Are they only allowed on their lunch break? What is that? So what I'm trying to say to you is that's sort of kind of restricted to me when we're only using and not restricted, but I want to say that I hope we're not restricting them because we're moving towards electronic more than paper now anyway, everything. So it's going to come to that point where we need to make sure that all of our employees has accessibility or access to a way of getting their emails. And I would conclude with what Ms. Woodhouse has said. If you are a member of any association, yes, you do give them that. That is what confirmed that you are a member, clarify that you are a member of the association by your email. That's another sign of confirming this. That is who you are. Once you're not an employee, that it signs off. Your email signs off as well. So I would like to know, Bill, if when you're coming back to build that around our employee with email accessibility. Also, I am part of some other professional organizations and commissions as well. They do send me mail. I get stacks of mail through the U.S. Postal Mail all of the time. And it comes like almost like I got this information like coming like junk mail. But working around that, we're moving towards electronic devices and things, and that you said all of our employees have accessibility to an email. I want to make sure we work that information in as well with that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fel- Okay. Okay, we're on number 5. And it is rewritten, with the prior approval of the principal, employee associations may use a school's public address system.
Mrs. Williams, your white mic, please.
I'm sorry, thank you. With the prior approval of the principal, employee associations may use a school's public address system or other school communications systems, I guess, to announce the date, time, and place of association meetings, provided such use does not occur during the instructional part of the day. And the current policy is pretty much the same thing. And then it goes on to say, notwithstanding the above, school premises. I'm on 5, the bottom. I don't know if something was left out of this sentence.
No, that goes.
What's it supposed to read?
That picks up with that definition you saw right before C, designated locations. So I think it's picking up from that designated location definition. So it does read, notwithstanding the above, school premises, designated locations, comma, mailboxes, electronic mail, and school communication systems.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that, we even need that in there. Notwithstanding, yeah. Okay, so it's saying shall not be used by an employee association on its behalf or on behalf of a political action committee. Yeah, or
Yeah, I guess
other
that's it.
entity for the distribution or dissemination of information which directly or indirectly supports or opposes a candidate. Okay, okay, I see. For some reason, part of it was left out here. All right, so this is just, okay, so this would be if an association is having a meeting in one of our, or just any meeting, they could announce it after school's over? Is that what this is? Kinda?
Yes, well, the employee association themselves wouldn't use it, but an announcement would be made, to indicate that there's a meeting before or after school. So it would be done like early in the morning or afterwards.
Okay. Okay, and that's very similar to our current policy. Any, concerns about this one or likes or dislikes, Ms. Felton?
This- I'm wondering if we are trying to put too much into this policy when, earlier, Ms. Wing, you talked about the electronic, bulletin reading, and we stayed on it a long time. Would that be a part of that as well? I lost my place where it was, working out, employee.
This sounds like it's an announcement.
Well, wouldn't that be the same as having it on the electronic bulletin, the same thing, an announcement? Or will we have to? I'm saying, I'm trying to find that place, Attorney Linetti, where we actually stayed on that, and, Ms. Weems brought that up, about the electronic, and you said we're getting
Well, the
away from
electronic,
bulletin boards.
sorry, electronic posting place the end of section 3, right before section 4. But this section, this
Oh, yeah.
paragraph here, the notwithstanding paragraph, is going to lead you to no campaigning on school grounds, which that's a little bit your final sentence says. You can't use any of these methods to directly or indirectly approve a candidate for political office. So that's consistent with our non-campaigning
Okay.
procedures.
And you're right, I see you now, I was reading the top part of it, and then, I got you, thank you. I understand it now.
So do you think that we don't need the top part 5 since we've covered that with the bulletin board or the electronic bulletin board or the emails?
Right, I think 5, it does coincide with the electronic thing that we were already talking about. Ms. Trotman, you see where I am at 5, and we were talking about employees associated may distribute information in mailbox or by electronic email, but we came down, and that's when we started talking about the bulletin board, the electronic bulletin board. So would number 5 be necessary if we're gonna, can we include that? Mr. Delaney, am I four-stepping? I mean,
I don't believe it's an overstep. If I'm hearing what you're saying, Ms. Felton, is that digital message board being included in this part of 5, or is it
Yeah.
needed?
or we can include 5 in that electronic, we can include,
Yeah,
make it.
yeah, kinda, yeah, cause it
Bring
is,
it together.
yeah. You're just trying to make it more concise.
Yeah, it's more
Since it-
concise.
Yeah, so if we
I'm a
could-
big believer if it's long, it's wrong. So if you want to make it more concise, Ms. Felton, I'll
Okay, yeah,
support
so
you
if y'all,
100%.
yeah,
Thank
so maybe,
More concise.
yeah, cause we've already kind of addressed all the ways, prior to that, so number 5. But then, but leave the campaigning on the
Yes,
last part,
yes.
okay. Is that good with you, Mr. Bonesteel? Okay, thank you. Okay, and then we're at the very end, D. So this was basically all scratched out because we have a whole nother policy for it, correct, Ms. Linetti?
There's, 2 things going on here. And you'll see somewhere else, there's a new statute that addresses when employee association members who are serving in like an executive position, president, vice president, can take leave.
Right.
And they call that educational leave. When we drafted this one years ago, it was for, let's say you wanted to leave to go, I'm gonna say like example, to the General Assembly for a day to do it. That's professional leave. So because of this new change, we need to define here that here in section, is this D4? D, we want to make it clear that you can take leave, professional leave, to go do employee association matters, which will be different than another policy that's coming up. The crossed out part below that has to do with deduction for employee dues. You picked that up in a prior policy, I think it was last month, and you approved the deductions on there. So it doesn't need to be here because it's in another policy. The part that's remaining up top is to clarify the type of leave you're allowed to take to do employee association business.
Okay, my question is, in our current policy, it just says may take leave, and in your rewrite, may take professional leave. What is the difference and why was it changed? I mean,
Because you're gonna see in another policy that, and it's a little unusual, the new statute says if you're gonna go serve in a leadership role in one of these organizations, it's gonna be called educational leave, and that's gonna allow it to be potentially VRS credible on there. So to distinguish that from when we let you go on employee business and you're required to adopt the other policy that's coming up, this leave, which was allowed, is now going to be falling under professional leave. So when they code it, they needed to have a way to code it to understand that this is professional leave to go. Let's say you're going to a seminar or let's say a national organization meeting for this employee association, you're going to take professional leave.
okay, so they have to take professional leave because of the new code, and before they had.
It didn't have to, we wanted to clarify, we want to make sure we're clarifying the type of leave, and Dr. Troutman, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this type of leave is, I'm a member of the association, I'm going to some event that they're having, so I can use professional leave to do that. And it's got to be coded that way. You're going to see another policy coming up that for some reason the General Assembly decided to call that educational leave when you're serving the organization in a long-term role. So we wanted to make sure we were clarifying the type of leave the employee's taking.
Okay.
So, Ms. Trotman, is there a definition for professional leave and or educational leave? It is. Can you clarify the definition for professional leave?
Absolutely. Let me pull it up for you. That is in policy, and I'll pull it up and read it for you.
So while she's looking that up, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Puncio. Are you, about this the leave part? Okay.
I do, I have a question on, it says where the employee association business provides the employee association reimburses the school division for actual expenses for required substitutes.
We're not, yeah, we're not there.
Well, that's part of that section, but we didn't.
Yeah, we're not
do
quite there
changes.
yet. I'm sorry, we're not quite there.
So what policy is that, Ms. Trotman?
This is under Regulation 4-53.2, and it says that professional leave will be governed by these regulations. Request. Any employee who wishes to attend a professional improvement activity requiring travel to a non-BBCPS site should file a request for professional leave with the appropriate administrator. Requests for professional leave should be made in a timely fashion to avoid disruptions to the school or department. If an approval is granted, the school board may reimburse the individual for the reasonable expense related to fees, meals, lodging, and transportation. And then under B, reporting, employees attending professional improvement activities will be encouraged to share the information from such sessions with colleagues.
Thank you. Hold your finger on that policy, on the regulation. You ready?
Are you good with that? Okay. All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Bowenstiel.
Can I leave?
Please, we're still on D4. You were at the very end of that sentence. Can you, yeah. Go ahead with your
Okay.
question. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So when they go on, the teachers, I guess, or whoever goes on this professional learning, so the school, division is still, we paying them?
No, and that should not be professional. We discussed personal, it's in another policy. Ms. Linnelli,
I'm
It's in
not
another-
sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Which league?
I would suggest
Right.
that we go back and take a look at
Absolutely.
that piece.
Because what I'm trying to get at is that, I guess if they're gone, we need to have a substitute teacher.
Correct.
And then it's just something about reimburses the expenses for the substitute. But my question is, if we're paying the teacher, whose salary I'm guessing is a little bit more than a substitute, you see what I'm saying? Why wouldn't we get the reimbursement for the teacher and pay the substitute?
and so we can bring that back because there is another policy that talks about the association reimbursing, and that's someplace different. So we would need to come back. That is not accurate. So we bring that back. We need more research on that, but it is someplace else. I just have to find it. Yep.
It was always the understanding that you took the leave at your expense, which means it was your annual or personal reasons leave. And so the professional leave clarification piece there, we just need to go back and take a look at. We don't recall that previously. And so, and leaving it just as leave actually left it wide open. So we
Right.
do need to clarify
yes.
what type of leave it is.
Yeah,
So if you
definitely.
allow us to, we'll come back with that correction.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, so that's all for that policy. Do we have, so staff and Ms. Linetti, are y'all pretty confident of our directions and our, concerns or
Taking
confusion or
notes, so I think I
questions?
understand.
Okay. Do we have anything else to send with them as they rewrite this, redraft it? Okay.
Okay.
All right, let us get all our papers. We have a bunch up here.
There's more in the red line, I guess, huh?
Well, what you're seeing, the rest of the red line there is your next policy, so we moved.
Okay,
So,
yeah, let me just. Okay, everybody, now we are on policy 436. Well, first of all, let's take an official vote. Do I have a motion to move, to send back 432 to staff for them to make, some draft changes, according to what our suggestions and our questions were?
So move.
So moved-
Second.
And moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Back, and so that will come back to the PRC at our next meeting. Okay, we are now at policy 436, payroll deductions.
all right, so you can see there's a lot of redlining here, and we thought this would be a better clarification. So instead of the first section being payroll deduction is going to be general, it's going to be read as general. A, no deduction shall be made from the salary wages of any employee except deductions required by federal, state law, or deductions specifically approved by the school board. The school division shall administer all payroll deductions in compliance with applicable federal and state law. And that is actually what the state law says, you cannot deduct unless it meets the requirement. So then we put in definitions, so B, required deductions. The school division shall make the deductions required by law, including federal income tax withholding. 2, Social Security, Medicare, FICA contributions. 3, Virginia income tax holding. 4, Virginia retirement system member contributions for covered employees. 5, garnishment liens and income withholding orders to the extent required by law. And any other deductions mandated by federal and state law or by court order. So again, that's required by statute. Then there'll be C, these will be voluntary deductions. A voluntary deduction, meaning any deduction other than those required by law, shall be made only upon the approval of the school board at the written request of the employee. Now, just for practical purposes, I think 2 meetings ago, maybe 3 meetings ago, you approved the payroll deductions for the year, so you do that every year. And again, we don't do that unless the employee has said, please authorize this deduction. We're not allowed to take that unless the employee writes that. So 2, no voluntary deduction shall be approved that does not offer advantages or opportunities open and available to all employees. 3, the school board shall approve annually the list of authorized voluntary payroll deductions. The administration shall make available only those voluntary deductions included on the approved list, and again, that's the list you recently approved. And 4, a voluntary deduction shall remain in force until the employee provides authorization in the manner determined by the administration to discontinue it. And then you move to D, employee association dues. 1, an employee association may have the dues of its members deducted from their paychecks, provided that employee association dues deduction is included on the school board's approved list of voluntary deductions, and the employee has authorized the deduction in the manner determined by the administration. 2, the authorization shall remain in force until the employee provides authorization in the manner determined by the administration to discontinue the deduction. 3, an employee who is employed or who joins an employee association after November 1st may elect to have dues deducted for the remainder of the fiscal year by providing authorization to the administration at least 10 days before the date the first such deduction is to take place. And 4, the administration shall verify each authorization and administer the deduction provided that the employee association reimburses the school division for the actual cost of providing this service. And E, administration. The administration shall administer all payroll deductions, including garnishments and income withholding orders, in accordance with this policy, Regulation 436.1, Regulation 436.2, and applicable federal and state law, and then we've updated the legal references. So a lot of that was in that last paragraph you saw of the prior policy. You saw us take that out. It got moved and listed out as bullets in this section.
All right, do I have any, let's just go with the very first part of this, the general A, no, do I have any, concerns or comments on A?
No.
So that's basically follow the law. Okay, so we're good with that. Okay. B, required deductions that listed 6 of those, required by law. Any questions about any of those? Again, I love that we like to follow the law.
Yes.
Okay, C, voluntary deductions. And so we've got 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Any comments on any of those areas? Let's just go with the number 1.
Number 1, yes, I would like to ask, is this policy or intent for the payroll system that we have now? Did we write this policy around that system?
This would have worked with the prior payroll system too.
prior?
This is really just authorization to do a deduction.
So what I'm understanding is now our employees can go in and do the employee self-service and determine what you want to do with your payroll. Am I correct, or am I?
I'm not sure I can answer that exactly. It might be somebody who understands the payroll system. I do know you have to authorize before they can do it. I don't know if it's electronic or it's on paper.
I know from my understanding, when I went in and I wanted to make more for my tax deduction, is I could go in the system and do all of that and make that happen for myself. So that's self-service, right? So that's still self-service is what we're doing. So one is saying that now before we can do that, we have to get the employees have to get approval from the school board. Is that how that reading?
Not for the choice that they're making, for that to be a deduction that we will take out the school board. And that's what you do in your annual list. These are the following types of deductions we will authorize to be taken out. So that's what they mean. It's not how much or whether you're changing it. That doesn't need school board approval. That just means this is the type of deduction.
Okay.
So if we wanted to say you can take out your pet insurance on this one, you would have to have authorized that as a deduction that can be taken out.
And
but you
that
would
is
do
with a
manually.
written request, the employee would have to write a request to get that done and that be sent to the school board. Is that when you use approval of the school board? I think that's where I'm getting hung up there a little.
It's a type of deduction that requires approval of the school board. You can never take money out of an employee's paycheck unless it meets the required ones, like in the section B on the federal deductions. After that, anything voluntary, the employee has to agree that this has to be taken out. We can't take that out. So you can't decide Cammie was late from work, so I'm gonna deduct an hour of her pay. You can't take it out of my paycheck. I have to authorize that.
Did you have something, Ms. Woodhouse?
And I was gonna say, I can give you another example. The school board approved, United Way to be a payroll deduction. So when I do my United Way, my annual United Way donation, even on that electronic form, there's a spot that says you grant permission for this deduction to come out automatically. If I don't check that box, even though you've approved it, the division cannot take United Way out of my check, because you know what happens. Employee's gonna come back and say, you took money out of my check without my permission. So because it's on the approved list, it's much easier.
Right.
If I came to my division and, I don't know, and said, can you take my car payment out automatically? They would say, absolutely not. It's not on the approved list of the school board, whether I give them permission or not.
Okay.
So that list that you guys approve annually does make things a lot easier, especially for me, for United Way. It's much easier to do a payroll deduction.
So what I'm understanding you to say that if it's not on the school board approval list,
Correct.
if I want an entity to take out money, I have to, so every employee would have to write that request.
And it would
And
have to
request-
be an approved item. It still has to be approved. Because if not, basically, you would have staff trying to figure out what you want coming out of your check at all times. And being a business and an organization, what you have said is this is the list that's approved. Anything outside of that
Okay.
list has to get school board approval as well as your approval.
Okay, so your approval, you're writing I'm just trying to be able to understand you.
Yes,
So I can
ma'am.
have that conversation with my constituents is
Yes,
asking
ma'am.
this as well, that's
Yes.
reading this. So if I want another outside volunteer entity, I said, I will write a request and say, this is what I want to be deducted out of my check, but still. it's
Correct,
another
but
step.
it still may not be approved if it's not on the initial list that the board approves annually.
Okay,
I think I see what Ms. Felton might be
what
saying. The
she's
way
saying.
as read here, it could
Right.
be, school board, would you please take out my mortgage payment for me? I agree to it, school board. And maybe it should be, maybe we can clarify, it should only be made from the approved list, the school board. I see what Mrs. Felton's pointing out, that it looks like I could ask you to take my mortgage out, the school board agreed to that.
Right.
You would make that exception just for me, and it should be more from the approved list, so I can see where she's pointing out the confusion.
But if I may add, I think it was originally written that way because if a large group indicates kind of like, for something, it at least will come forward to the board as our employees have asked if this particular item can qualify for a payroll deduction, would you consider it or not? So I think the idea was not to limit the idea that although there's approved list, things can go on the list as well as things can come off the list. So I think it was left with the idea that if a request came through and maybe administration said, okay, on your behalf, we'll take it to the school board can then decide, yes, add it to the annual list, or no, we don't agree. Because, 10,000 people could say, can my mortgage come out? And the board could still say no. So it didn't want to limit the fact that although we have an approved list, it doesn't stop you from bringing new items forward or taking items off the list. So I think, Cam, if I remember correctly, that's why some of that
Yeah,
language
I
came
think we
about.
could clean up the language here a little bit. I'm just, because I could see how you're pointing out how it could be read. And I think there might be some clarification to that approval.
Well, it still says approval of the school board.
Right, but I'm curious, Ms. Woodhouse, with what you just said about if I'm asking monetary reasons, I'm curious, why would you tell me no?
Because not every request necessarily is a professional request. And so, I mean, if we're getting into paying it, and I know we threw out the word mortgage, but there's some things that's just a responsibility of yourself, not, because every time you want a payroll deduction, that's work on the payroll department. And so, that's why the board looks at the list that's approved.
Okay.
And if you really look at that list, majority of that list is all school business. United Way is one of those because we have an MOA agreement with. So when you really look at that list, it's like your benefits, and that's another form. Every year when you fill out your form for benefits, if you don't check that box that says, I grant the division permission to take this out of my check, they will not, and you will not have benefits. So even though it's on the approved list, because it's the individual's pay and paycheck, you cannot take that out unless it's a court-ordered garnishment or something like that is totally different. So even those items on the approved list, the employee still has to give permission for the division to take that out of their money, their paycheck.
So, and I'm understanding you, and you clarified it, thank you so much. So the required reduction is one list, but there is another list that we have as well, annual list that we have?
Yes. And you approved that recently, so we can pull up the meeting minutes and just set forth those categories that you approved, so.
Okay, and sometimes, some of the questions that I ask, and I want to be heard, is because the individual listening in on need clarification. And when they get that one-on-one clarification from, Human Resources and from, Chief of Staff, it makes a difference in how I'm trying to say it to you.
Absolutely.
And I like how you came in and said everything is not a professional.
Which is
Thank you.
absolutely, you would be surprised sometimes the requests we get for things to be automatically taken out of people's paychecks, and we can professionally tell them it doesn't qualify.
But if an organization or, and I'm moving on, Ms. Williams, you gotta go. As an organization move on, like you said, a group can come, they can present it to the school board. There will be some, for lack of a better word, vetting of that, vetting, I'm trying to get vetting out of my, vocabulary really, with that group, so that would come forth, right?
Absolutely,
Thank
we
you.
would take a look at that closely.
Thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you so much, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Thank you, thank
fine.
you.
That's what we're here for, to make it
Thank you.
as
Because-
clear as we can.
Yeah, and,
so that
you
everybody
know,
can-
all of the policies belong to the school board.
and the-
We are just an
yeah,
entity that the school
right.
board has assigned to make sure that we, go through and decipher and make it more understandable. So, I'm working on the behalf of the school board, so,
Well, and we want to make sure that
Right.
when a citizen reads the policy,
They
he or she can
understand it.
understand it and not say, can you deduct my church offering? And can you deduct my, medical insurance for my dog? It would be easy for you to do all that, but it would be very hard because we have got so many employees. So it's just
you.
for everybody to understand. So that's, we're fine. Okay, Mr. Bowensteel, do you have anything on C, 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Nope.
All right, so, we will move on to, and again, Cammie, if you want to try to,
I think what
Clear
I'm
up the
looking at
language,
is
I mean-
probably a pretty quick fix,
Yeah,
but we
just
can
a-
read back to you. I
okay,
think
yeah,
it's
just a
just
few
from the
words.
approved list at the school
Right.
board. I think it just
Yeah.
needs to say it that way.
yeah, that'll be great. All right, D, employee association dues. See, I'm trying to find it, let's see. I'm still trying to find out the differences. Okay, so, what is the new verbiage here, Cammie?
It's not, it's really what we took out of the last policy and we put it over here, which makes sense because this is where your deductions are. So we just moved it over here. So we
Okay,
can-
so that's why it's in red, because it was just moved from that last one. Okay, so this is about employee association dues. The first one, employee association may have their dues of its members deducted from their paychecks, provided that the employee association dues deduction is included on the school board's approved list of voluntary deductions and the employee has authorized the deduction, okay? Two, the authorization shall remain in force until the employee provides authorization in the manner determined by the administration to discontinue the deduction. Three, an employee who is employed or who joins an employee association after November 1st may elect to have dues deducted for the remainder of the fiscal year by providing authorization to the administration at least 10 days before the date the first such deduction is to take place. And four, the administration shall verify each authorization and administer the deduction, provided that the employee association reimburses the school division for the actual cost of providing these services. So I've got a couple questions, but I'm gonna let my colleagues go first. Does anybody have any concerns or questions or clarification needed for D1? And that's kind of what we just talked about, being on the school's approved list and has been authorized. Okay, nothing? Okay, I think D1 is good. D2,
I do.
Mr. Bowensteel?
Yes, it reads the authorization shall remain in force until the employee provides and gets it deducted. I would like to see them, not have this in force until they decide on it, but every year that they re-sign up for it
Okay, so,
on a yearly basis, so to
okay, the
speak.
authorization should remind the person to the employee provides obviously in management to discontinue the, okay, so you want an annual,
Yes.
did you not say that? So we don't have that now?
Not as written here. Like if you did the United Way,
Yeah,
you would
'cause you
do
just
that
said
every
you had
year.
to check it.
Yeah, because you can change them out. So that's an every year authorization. I'm using that because it's one of the major examples of voluntary thing. Your benefits every year would be whatever you chose for benefits that would be deducted. And
Okay, so you want this to be an annual, authorization?
Right.
Done annually, okay, and how, so how would we say that, Cammie? The authorization shall remain in force until the employee provides,
I think you would just say the employer would need to annually provide authorization for this deduction.
okay,
I don't know what point we do that, so.
Well, part of the reason is I know a lot of times people get caught up in things. They sign up for stuff and then kind of put it to the side and they don't even think about it. I've talked to people who are like, I didn't even realize that I was still a member of this, or they're taking money out. So that's just kind of what I wasn't trying to create more work, but just to kind of let them realize.
they've got that commercial on about how many people are paying stuff they have no clue they're paying. So, okay, so do we have any other, concerns with number 2 or any thoughts? No, okay, so if you could come back with just the, when you
I
come back
might
with the
need to
draft of the
speak to
sentence about
payroll
annual.
about the procedure for that.
Yeah, the annual, authorization. Okay, number 3, after November 1st, authorization to the administration at least 10 days before the date. So if they join before November 1st, do they, I mean, why is this one, why is this there?
I know this is old, I don't know if I know why.
Yep, and we'll double check. If I'm not mistaken, there's a time frame by which you have to set up your deductions, because most of them are based on, broken out over a certain month period, and usually it's a set amount. So if people just joined at any time, you would have
I
different amounts
actually
coming
think
out, so-
the old procedure was the employee association would verify that these are the members, that were the association, and I think that's a very old procedure where there was a time where the employee association gathered all the employee, deduction requests and sent in, I think there was procedure where they verify these are all the employees, that are asking deductions on there. I'm not sure if it's still done that way anymore.
Is it, can we verify if that's still done that way? Or now, if I'm not mistaken, we're supposed to be getting a new system, correct? Years down the road,
Sorry.
okay.
Yes, so they just started the early
Okay.
process of the RFP, so we're talking a few years down the line for that. And we want to go back and verify the November 1 date, because
Yeah,
for a lot of our payroll stuff, we thought it was a little sooner. So if we could bring
Yes,
that back to you, let us
definitely.
check with payroll on that.
yeah, because I had no idea why you picked, why it was November 1st either. Okay, number 4, the administration shall verify each authorization and administer the deduction, provided that the employee association reimburses the school division for the actual cost of providing this service. I guess my question is, what does that look like when the administration shall verify?
Right.
Like what does that look like? How do you do it? How much time does it take? How much does it cost?
And what is that process?
Yeah, what does that look like? I don't know what that means.
I know a very long time ago, like 30 years ago when I started, that there was a piece of paper form that you signed up that I'm a member of the organization, and there, I'm not sure it's still done that way on the paper forms. I do know when we talked about payroll deductions at the school board meeting, I believe someone asked Ms. Pate that question, whether there was a cost involved anymore, and
Right.
I think if I'm saying, don't quote me on this, but I think she said because so much of it is electronic anymore, they don't really have the cost of having to go through individual membership cards and verify that you had signed up this year. So what may have been an old procedure, there was not a significant cost to doing this anymore.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in here,
We did.
actually, and
We
she said it
actually-
was, yeah, she said it was very nominal, and she didn't really have an answer. So basically, when we say employee association reimburses the school division, so are we saying that is that happening or not happening because there's no verified cost?
I will say with the current employee association that's in there, it is not, because of the way they do it electronically, it is not a burden to us. I don't know if a future organization coming in would go back to like the paper cards or something like that. That's a possibility on there. I just, what I understand from Ms. Pate, and this question came up when Mr. Hunsaker was the CFO, and he had verified at that time that at one time it was a lot of work for them, and then because of the way it was coming electronically, it was no longer the burden, so there wasn't really a need to reimburse for it. And I think Ms. Pate has confirmed that that continues to be the procedure. So I don't know that this is needed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this even needed in there, or do we need to have it in there in case another organization that maybe isn't as, I don't know, I mean, I don't know if it's even needed.
That might be something. I will say now that so many things are electronic,
Right.
employees are doing electronically. We're not doing pieces
Yeah.
of paper that the payroll has to check against. It may no longer be an issue
Okay,
for us.
well, we're gonna bring this one back too, so if we could bring back a recommendation and a verification that, when administration verifies this, there's nothing to it, basically, and to see if we even need this in there.
Right, and Attorney Linetti, you bring up a good point where I hit on earlier about electronic technology is removing a lot of paperwork. There, now I still write down my notes, my to-do list. I'm writing that down, but pretty much, I guess we need to see how this will work electronically for our employees as well. You know, considering all things, Ms. Trotman, how this would work efficiently for our employees electronically. So we're going that way, so. that's-
All right, so do I have anything else, any more discussion on this policy 436, payroll deductions? Okay, do I have a motion to, let staff clean this up and verify some concerns and questions that we have and bring it back to us?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor to bring 436 back to PRC?
Aye.
Signify by
Aye.
say aye. Opposed? All right, we will bring this one back. Okay, we've got policy 448. We're gonna go through this one, and then, we're going to take a 5-minute restroom break after 448.
I know, as I mentioned before, there was a change in the law this year. Prior to this change, we had, had gone ahead and done the policy to clarify leave of absence when you're serving as an officer in a professional organization. This has changed. What's very significant about what the law did, the law allows an employee who takes a type of leave to go to VRS. And there's a category under VRS in which they can ask to get credible compensation. That did not exist before. You had to fit in a category. And there's some procedures that we now have to adopt because of the new law. So let me go through this and I'll see if I can explain it to you. We had sort of anticipated something of this nature when we did our procedure for it. The law has now changed a little and we do have to adopt this. So it now will read leave of absence for employee and professional organization officers. A, eligibility and duration. So we're going to put 1 here. And this is because the law separates this. State Employee Association Executive Officer or Local Employee Association Officer, and I'll read, upon written application to the school board, an employee shall be granted an unpaid educational leave, and that is the terminology you need to get the VRS credit, so that an unpaid educational leave of absence to serve as a state employee association executive officer or a local association officer for a maximum of 4 years per officer, and we strike the rest of that. That's important for VRS purposes on there. So then we separated, which is another category the law is now allowing, is 2, professional association president, and we put or executive officer. And it would read, the school board may grant an employee an unpaid educational leave of absence to serve as the president, or parentheses, executive officer of a professional organization. An employee will be limited to a maximum of 4 years or 48 months of unpaid leave of absence to serve as a professional association president or executive officer during the employee's career with the school division. All terms of professional association president or executive officer service with any professional organization will be counted toward the 4 years or 48-month maximum. If the professional organization requires that employee remain in a paid or active position with the school division while serving as the president or executive officer, the school board may make exception to this policy that are consistent with the applicable law and regulation. And I point this out, we've had several people serve as the president of the National Elementary Association Principals on there. I think Linda Hayes did that. I think currently Krista Barton, who's now retired, is serving on that. So we make an exception for that, to that. So that's it. But the law is really dealing with the changes as the Employee Association in 1, but we've allowed our employees to do that, to take leave for that. So that's why we've got that in there. So then you would move on to section 3. This is salary and benefits during unpaid leave. It would be A, the employee association or professional organization shall be responsible for paying the employee directly while the employee is on an unpaid educational leave of absence from BBCBS. Upon request, the school division will report pertinent salary information to the appropriate employee association or professional organization, and we've been doing that for years now. So we've made sure that the employee association is cleared there. B, the employee may not use sick or personal reasons leave already earned, nor will the employee accrue sick, personal reasons, or annual leave during the period of the employee's absence. And then C, the employee may be eligible to continue certain benefits in effect for the duration of the leave pursuant to the regulations governing the benefits. Employee coverage will continue unless the employee elects to cancel coverage while in an unpaid leave status. The employee association, or professional association will be responsible for making entire premium benefits, both employee and employer portions, for health care coverage and continuation of other eligible benefits. This should be done by direct payment to the Consolidated Benefits Office, CBO, in advance of each month. If cancellation of coverage is not elected within 30 calendar days of the start of the unpaid educational leave of absence and subsequent premiums are not submitted, coverage will terminate at the end of the month for which the last premium was paid. And then D reads, the employee may only retain life insurance benefits for a maximum of 24 months. E will be amended to read, employees on an unpaid educational leave of absence under this policy will not accrue credible service retirement time during their leaves of absence. If the employee returns to the Virginia Retirement System VRS covered position, the employee will be subject to VRS regulations regarding the purchasing of prior service credit due to the employee's leave of absence, the purchase may be paid to VRS by the employee association, the professional organization. So we had adopted this procedure. It was not really clear in the law or VRS. So what this is saying is you could take your leave. We are not responsible for paying into VRS for that. If it meets one of the categories under VRS, you can buy back that time, the credible portion. That's why we're using the term educational leave, because that is the term that VRS is going to say is allowable for credible time to buy back. So we're not buying it for them. We'll let you take your leave. We'll report it back, but it's up to you to figure out with VRS whether you can purchase that or not, and that's between you. So we're not paying for that. We'll just recognize that. And B, return to work and or separation. A, prior to the conclusion of the unpaid educational leave of absence and as soon as possible, the employee will notify the Department of Human Resources the employee's intent to return to work. B, if the employee chooses to return to work, the employee will be assigned to the first available position for which the employee is qualified. And C, an employee who chooses not to return at the conclusion of the leave shall be separated from employer. In such cases, any remaining leave of absence shall be processed in accordance with the applicable policies and regulations. And then we just cite this new statutes that apply to this. So we basically had this procedure in place. We're just making sure it now matches with the current language. What is unique to this language is you as a school board have to approve this. If they meet the requirements for the executive officers in these organizations, you don't have any discretion. They have to be allowed to take leave, and they will do within accordance with policy. Before, the superintendent would have approved it.
Okay, so it says maximum of 4 years, so it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's not automatically 4.
No, it's going to have, yeah. Because you might start off like, let's say you're the executive officer for 2 years, or you're the vice president versus the president, or you could work out, you could be like secretary, treasurer, executive officer. I think that's why they did it.
Okay, so that's, I was wondering why that was.
That's to specify in the law, but I'm assuming
Okay.
that's so you can work a couple of, or you could have a 4-year term, I guess.
Okay, so this was, just looked at 2 years ago, but because the law changed, that's why we're looking at it quicker than 5 years. And like you said, this is law and we really don't have any wiggle room. But,
The professional association president part is a piece that we put in there because we've allowed that, but it's under
Yeah.
the same conditions. We're not paying for anything for you during that time period. We're allowing you to take that leave. If it's VRS, you're gonna have to work out the VRS. If you're entitled to health benefits, we'll allow you to do it, but you're gonna have to pay, and we're not gonna pay the employer's share of it because we're not giving you a paycheck during this time period.
and what law was this?
That is,
Yeah, what-
is 22.1296.
22
And then
okay.
the 51.142 is the VRS change to that.
Okay.
Now, we've had this process basically in place. This is just codifying what it was. So we weren't doing anything wrong before. We were just allowing you to take your leave, and we weren't paying into VRS or anything, so that we weren't scamming VRS for that reason. So this VRS is now caught up with allowing these association members to apply for leave. And again, we're not responsible for that. That's just VRS.
Okay, Ms. Felton?
So with that said, Ms. Trotman, with this being a mandate, we have no choice, we have to do this. What challenges does this put on our division? What we just,
Honestly, it doesn't. We've been following, as Mrs. Linetti said, the practice, so we were ahead. The language now is in the policy, but it matches our practice. So we were already engaged in the exact protocol practice, so it doesn't create a hardship.
The difference here is going to be the superintendent approved it before. They're not going to have to apply to the school board to do it, but you will not have any choice. You will have to approve it. So but we just need to adopt this policy so that procedure can be followed.
I'm just looking at all of the knowledge that they are going to require wherever they go. Like we could tie them in to bring it back to share it for at least a year. I'm just saying.
Yeah, the only question I had when you changed it was, if the employee, shall notify Department of Human Resources, their intent to return to work as soon as possible. You took that out, cause I was like,
We
when is
moved it.
I know,
We just
you
moved
moved it in the appropriate place, so that was the only question that I had.
I wish you could let this stay.
Okay, so do I have a motion, is there anything are we good with this to send on, any changes? I mean, it's a mandate, and so, and it's just codifying our practice. Okay, so do I have a motion to send policy 448 to the school board?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. There's no more discussion. All those in favor? Signify by aye. And so policy 448 will move on to the school board. And we are going to take a 5-minute quick break for everyone to grab some water, coffee, and go to the restroom. Thank you.
We don't have a snack down there?
All right, we're gonna try to get started here. We'll wait for Miss Linetti.
All right. Clock is ticking. Mark's patience is running thin. I was like, oh, cool, that's my right.
All right, we are back in session. We just took a break because we've been here for a couple hours. Thank you, everybody. All right, we are on policy 4-88, holidays, designated holidays. Ms. Linetti?
This is not required by law. It came up during calendaring, when you did your calendaring exercise, we have to look at the dates and which are holidays. The state law lists several series of holidays. You are not necessarily required to adopt them, but you generally have adopted all of them. Several years ago, we adopted Juneteenth because that was added, and we put in back the election days on there as a holiday. It came to our attention, look at the one holiday we haven't actually addressed is Columbus Day, and traditionally this school division does not take that off. So we thought, we had to look at the policy anyway, we wanted to make sure, is that something we want to discuss? Because that is one holiday that state gives, but you choose not to give, which is a choice you can make, but we just wanted to bring that to your attention to take a look at, whether that's something you wanted to consider, because some other school divisions do grant that. The rest is mostly formatting change, so we didn't have a strong opinion one way or the other, but you tend to grant all the other holidays, so we wanted you to think about that. But again, it's not been your practice in Virginia Beach City Public Schools to have Columbus Day off. So before you got to calendaring this year, we thought maybe we should take this conversation up.
Ms. Weems or Ms. Linetti, if you don't mind, I just want to make sure we draw our attention to the top of that policy. Because it does state there, unless otherwise designated in the school calendar as instructional days, staff days, or used as inclement weather days. I think that's sometimes we go to the second bulleted items, we don't look at the top. So as we've talked about on election days, for example, over time we have used that as a staff day. We have it in the calendar this year as a flex staff day. So sometimes we don't see that top part that says unless.
Right.
And we look and say, well, these are ones that automatically the calendar committee has to designate as a holiday.
Right,
And that's not what it's saying.
thank you.
But I think what Ms. Linetti's saying is that something you want included in the policy that then we would have to consider as a calendar committee to say we would embed that into any development process to say, that's Columbus Day. We would like to designate it as this or that. Does the board agree when they approve the calendar? That's the way I interpret it. I hope, Ms. Lenetti, I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
but
it's
just wanna
it's
make sure they
listed
see
as
the
a,
top.
a state law holiday. It is one law that we don't adopt, as what it says. Doesn't really matter one way or the other, but we didn't want that to come as a surprise if somebody came to you and say, it's a state law holiday, and you didn't list it. So we want to point out to you, and so it's Columbus Day or sometimes Indigenous People Day, putting in there, but that is what the state law puts in there. Is that something you want to consider to listing as a possible holiday? You don't have to do that. You've designated which of those holidays you would recognize potentially as a holiday.
Well, I mean, I think that's the big difference, because that was my concern, is I don't want to now make another parameter that only 3 of us have agreed to and not the other 8 board members when you're about to get the calendar committee to work on it. So I am hearing from you that even if we list it, because it says unless designated otherwise, that we're fine, that we're not gonna bound them to the belief that we have to have that day off. Is that?
That's how I interpret
Yeah.
it. For example, there's a school division I will not name that I think is scheduling a day on Veterans Day.
Yeah,
And even though it's listed, I think
Yeah.
where you run into some challenges is if it's listed, then it opens up for greater conversation of why we don't do it.
yeah,
But it clearly states at the top
Yeah.
of how we would answer that question. That's my long answer
yeah.
for you, Ms. Weems, but
right,
yes.
yeah, I mean,
But I didn't want with the public to say to you, hey, did you know that the state considers this a holiday and you've not
Right.
listed that?
yeah, so in your recommendation, you think it should be listed because the state listed it, but then it's got the flexibility of whatever the calendar committee comes up with.
Yeah, and you know how these come up, we'll get something from the community and say, oh, did we forget that? And so we thought we'd offer it, again, it doesn't matter because you can still schedule
Right.
what you want, but did we
Right.
want to put that in to make sure that it recognized that you knew it? It's not gonna change how you choose to do it, but
Okay, do I have any concerns? or
Ms. Weems, one more thing I want to draw to this to this policy, because sometimes we miss it with the overall school calendar, is for all 12-month employees. So that distinction's important, because when what HR, Human Resources, waits on us to get the approved school calendar, then dictates the calendar for our 10-month extended, our 11-month and 12-month employees. So this is specifically to how we handle our 12-month employees, which again, I don't think our community recognizes the amount of calendars we have for a variety of our stakeholders. So I wanted to draw that attention to the top.
Yep.
Because that gets missed very quickly, as Dr. Trotman has schooled me over the last couple of years in that manner.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot in that one sentence. Mr. Bowensteel, do you have any concerns or comments?
Whatever we do.
Fine. Ms.
No concerns, presented, and Mr. Delaney will explain it as clearly as he did today.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Delaney.
yes, thank you. Any staff, any other comments or, good? Okay. Do I have a motion to send policy 4-88 holidays to the school board?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. Any more discussion? All those in favor, signify
Aye.
by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Policy 488 will move on to school board. Thank you. Policy 530, graduation requirements, diplomas, and certificates.
I know Mr. Jameson was here earlier. This is his amendments to that, so I will try to help you out if y'all can do this. Section B, second paragraph, they've added 2 sentences having to do with the IEP and the 504 on there. Section C is certificates and diplomas, including section 1 would be added in here. Now, you've noticed we're also numbering these sections, so each local school board shall award diplomas to all secondary school students, including students who transfer from non-public schools or from home instruction who meet the requirements prescribed by Board of Education. Then you would number the next paragraph as 2, take out the section, and then 3 would be realigned to read students who meet all eligibility requirements and earn a passing score on a high school equivalency examination shall be awarded a GED. So I think it's just aligning with the state law. If you have any technical questions, I think I need to pass it to the other side of the aisle.
So you did state, Attorney Linetti, that it's aligning with the state law?
This is aligning with the law on there. I'm not sure it's new law. I think we just didn't have it incorporated into the policies before.
Okay, but you're taking the language right from the state law?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? All right, do I have a motion to send policy 5-30 onto the school board?
So move.
Moved by Ms. Felton,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 5:30, we'll move on to school board. Policy 538, freedom of speech and expression.
This was a 5-year check. The only change, other than the formatting, you'll see that the new WCAG requirement format is in C1. We added a semicolon after however, so that's the only change, and it's been formatted for the WCAG requirements.
Yep. All right, any comments or concerns, changes for the freedom of speech and expression?
None at all. Okay.
Good. All right, may I have a policy to move 5-38 onto the school board?
So move.
Motion made by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bowensteel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Policy 538 will move to school board. Policy 5-41, student dress and grooming codes.
Again, the 5-year check, it's just been formatted for WCAG. There are no other changes.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Number one, B1.
Sorry, which number is it? B1, sorry, there is one. What's that one? I think we made it plural. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one at C, and burden proof, just corrected it to, from inequitable to inequitably.
All right, I'll just, when I visit high schools, I'm kind of amazed when I look around. In fact, one high school I was visiting and I asked the principal if it was pajama day. Because, you know, we have spirit days in elementary. And she said no, but it was kind of amazing how many kids were in pajama and slippers. So, I mean, the shoes have to be safe, or are we letting kids wear pajamas to school, pajama bottoms? I mean, I guess that's,
I'll be honest, I don't hang out at the school, so I can't answer that.
I guess unless you have a, like, dress code, like a uniform, I would imagine that this is just so hard to kind of, reinforce, and, because it's such judgment calls and all that, but I don't know. I just kind of.
Yeah, it's a challenge
It
for
is a
sure, and it's,
challenge.
you know, Ms. Turnbull, who was walking up, and myself as former high school principals recognize the day-to-day that requires to monitor that.
Yeah,
The challenge of the response from the individuals that you are discussing that with, the other components that come with addressing that, the response from parents when you make them aware of this concern, can be somewhat taxing on folks. We do work very hard with our administrators to try and uphold this standard, and work with our parents to uphold that standard as well. And it's just something that we continue to try to remind
yeah.
our leaders, but it's like many of our policies around student behavior, you have to really stay very consistent with it, and that's been a challenge for years.
yeah.
When we were required to amend the dress code, it was to make it so it was unisex, so it wasn't, you know, skirts for girls, it was pants for boys. One of the other concerns I had was, are we doing things that are prohibiting students from feeling comfortable going to school? And so, you know, so we had a lot of discussions, and I actually participated in a group of students on a long discussion on leggings and things like that.
Yeah.
So basically, if you read our policy, you need to be covered. I'm going to stand up and show you. From under your armpits to 5 inches below your below your groin, and it can't be too revealing. So we did not get into a lot of the details because at that time, the concern was you also worry about truancy issues. What are things that are keeping kids from coming to school? Are students who are economically challenged, homeless, do not have enough clothes, they have to keep wearing that. So we did not focus on so much types of clothes as that you're appropriately covered and not showing too much and that it's safe. You can't have, dangerous earrings in or things like that. We did not get into these details, and I will tell you, we did have long discussions with students about pajamas and other things, and looking at, and believe it or not, leggings was the big issue at that time period on there. So when this was first developed, the idea was how can we make students want to come to school and not discourage them from that. So some of these details did not come in. I will tell you, some schools like Dr. Johnson participated in that, and she wanted them business attired, ready to go to work, which was different than other schools were
Yeah.
having
Yeah,
that, and she was pretty adamant about that. And so again, the philosophy at the time period is let's make sure kids can get to school and be covered and not distracted and not make them feel as though they're not welcome at school. So that was the philosophy behind the dress code.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the challenge, and I've been called to that office. Please, Ms. Weems, bring a new set of clothes for your child. So I've been there, but I just went, and what she wore that day was very cute. I bought it. But anyway.
You just highlighted the challenge we had. Ms.
Exactly.
Williams.
But I went there and I did not argue because it's their call, but I understand. But anyway, so has there ever been any serious conversation about uniforms in this?
Yes, at that time period there was, because it's an option for you to do that, and that was struck down, majorly struck down.
Like by the our constituents, our community, or how
Clearly by students and parents, but then you got into the concern for those schools that have larger populations of students who are economically challenged. Would they have to purchase the uniforms, and would you have an extra set of uniforms if your family couldn't afford to do laundry this week? Did you have a second set? So there were some very serious conversations about that at the time. Understanding that uniforms do take out some other concerns about bullying and some inappropriate language, but the decision really came down to the ability to enforce it. A child certain age groups are growing very fast, and you can't afford to buy a new pair of pants because your kid grew 6 inches in the last 2 months. So it was discussed. It's an option for you. It was determined Virginia Beach would not enforce that at that time period.
Yeah.
Although you do have some schools that do have uniform requirements.
Yeah. Well, even with uniforms, it's not always black and white either. So I know it's challenging for everybody. All right. Do we have any comments on the dress code one? All right. So do I have a motion to send policy 541 onto the school board?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 541 will go to the school board. Now we're at 546.
Oops, back up. The instructor information.
Student government.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I flipped right past it. 546 was just reviewed. It was formatted. We did not have recommendations. It was up for the 5-year review, so that was just a formatting issue, so that's why it reads review.
Yep. I have no changes or suggestions. Mr. Bowenstiel, do you? Huh? Ms. Felton?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, I need a motion to send policy 546 onto the school board.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Felton.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 546 will go to school board. 552, cell phone free education.
We had to look at this one because the state has added they use the term smart devices has been changed. We had the term personal electronic communication device, which we still think covers it. But to be on the safe side, we have added smart devices and other personal communication devices in here just to make sure we're consistent with state law. It doesn't really change it for us. You will see in our regulation, we've also added glasses. I've had a couple of departments say, hey, these meta glasses are becoming a potential concern for us.
Oh, yeah.
And so that, you'll see that in the regulation. We think the smart devices, our other personal communication devices, electronic communication devices covers that. Because we've already printed the handbooks and stuff out there, we didn't feel like we should just take it out and just switch to smart devices. So we just added smart devices to this definition.
And Mr. Delaney, I mean, how's it going? How's the cell phone free education going?
I think it's similar to what we just talked about the dress code.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a challenge to continually ensure that you're seeing our numbers are still pretty high, especially in the high school end, which is, as I've shared before, shows you that people are taking it seriously and enforcing it. If the numbers were low, I'd have a lot of concerns, just
Yeah.
because going in buildings, we're seeing better engagement in the classroom.
Excellent.
We're seeing a lot more consistency on that end, but we're now hitting a time where fatigue can come in, so we're continually reminding our administrators to stay the course.
Yeah,
So we've seen improvements for sure,
perfect.
but it's not anything I think I'll ever spike the football on as if we've solved it, but
Right, yeah.
we feel like we're better aligned than we were 4 years ago.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, any other comments on policy 5-52? All right, may I have a motion to send this on to school board?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And 552 goes on to school board. All right, 566, student directory.
And student directory information is the exception under federal law for that information that we do not, we can tell you we will release this, and we don't need your consent to release, otherwise student personal information has to have consent. There were some changes in the law. One very significant change this year coming out of the General Assembly had to do with the protection of information related to your status as immigration or citizenship. You'll see, we are implementing that into a regulation that we had to acquire. So we decided to make sure it's covered in directory information. Under D, you'll see we're adding a sentence to the end of the paragraph, say, in accordance with applicable law, immigration or citizenship status, country of origin or birth, nationality or national origin may not be designated as directory information. It generally isn't, but we want to be very careful that nobody made that mistake because there's a lot of new legislation in Virginia on that. While we were looking at that, we realized there had been a change in the law a couple of years ago that we had not implemented. So under section F, this has to do with foster parents. Upon written request of a foster parent of an enrolled student, the school will redact the address of the foster parent prior to providing the student's parent any record containing such address. So it's generally been our practice not to do that. We just went ahead and added that. And again, that's not new this year. We just hadn't added it before. And then we've updated the legal reference.
Okay, and the last time this was, okay, in 25, but we're seeing it so close because the law has been changed.
Correct.
All right. Okay, any comments or suggestions or questions, concerns? Ms. Felton, are you good?
I am good.
Okay, may I have a, a motion to move?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
motion's been made to move policy 566 to school board and seconded by Mr. Bowenstiel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 566 moves to school board, and our last one, 757, this actually came, we had a constituent to send an email. I'm not sure if she copied everybody, but I sent it on to Cammie with, her request to kind of look at this policy because she thought it was inconsistent, with a little bit of the language, surrounding e-bikes. So Cammie?
Well, we believe that they fall under, if you're talking about motorized scooters or bikes, fall already under the statute. Now, it says without prior approval of the building administrator. So we were recommending taking that out, that you cannot use what's listed in number 2, all those different types of motorized electronic vehicles. Bringing up, and actually this is where Ms. Cleveland pointed out to me, so we added a 3. What about those persons who have electric or motorized wheelchairs or scooters? We might make sure under the ADA they can have that, because we
Right.
certainly have that. So we, under Ms. Cleveland's key and I, we caught that, so we put 3 in. Electric or motorized wheelchairs or scooters may be used on school grounds by those persons with disabilities who require assistance due to mobility limitations. So most electronic motorized things are going to be controlled in section 2, but there's an exception for those who need it for mobility.
Okay, yeah, so I think the concern with this constituent was it said that they were not allowed, but then it said with the principal's prior approval, so you struck that sentence out, which I like.
And I think you've heard from the administration, this is a growing problem for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, I guess Delaney, yeah, tell us about e-bikes. I see them all over the place. In fact, one of my students just had an accident on his the other day. So,
Yeah, we're working very closely with our partners in the VBTPD around how we educate in our communities around the e-bike concern. We've worked with our summer school sites to ensure they're aware that they are not to be allowed on campus. We're reinforcing that communication
good.
heading into the school year. Ms. Livas has included some things around the messaging as well. Our Office of Security and Emergency Management, and we've had some pretty significant situations with our kids, not at school, off school sites, that have resulted in some pretty significant injuries that I think we're just concerned about as an entire community.
Oh, yes,
So,
yeah.
that's the conversation we have going on right now, and I just want to make sure as this policy gets approved, that it's aligned with any of the regulations or conversations we're having with our principals.
Okay, and then, yeah, that's great that Ms. Livas is gonna do a communication, because I think that's something that parents need to be aware of. Now, with these e-bikes, can just any age ride them, or?
I'll
ride
probably
them?
share my ignorance by not being able to tell you
Yeah.
exactly that level. There's a lot of grades of the e-bikes that are considered when you need to wear a helmet, when you don't need to wear a helmet, those type of things. And I would defer to Tommy Shattuck from OSIM on that, because he does a great job of defining that, and we've been defining that with our high school principals as well.
Yeah, because I mean, this is elementary level they're riding now, too.
Correct, that's
yeah.
right. And
So,
that-
so the principals are gonna have gotten the communication, the parents are gonna get the communication that no e-bikes on
Yeah,
campus.
once I have to
Yeah,
go back and
before-
look
yeah.
at some things and what we've communicated, because the high school end, there was some leeway in terms of a transportation vehicle for a student with a driver's license. So I need to take a look at
Okay.
how this policy impacts that. But your point to your initial question was, initially a lot in the city were about, can we get in front of your middle schools and high schools? And I said exactly what you did. I'm seeing elementary school kids as well.
Right.
And in
Oh,
our
yeah.
tight neighborhoods of schools that 100 kids ride a bike to school, that we want to make sure we're educating them as well. And I failed to mention that Matt Orbaugh, the coordinator of physical education, is embedding this within the existing curriculum on bike safety, which I believe is a
Good.
5th grade curriculum standard. And then it's going to be embedded throughout the secondary levels as well. So he's been engaged in that work with the city of how do we implement this to an already existing health and physical education curriculum.
Okay. Okay. That looks good to me. Any comments?
I just want to ask
Yeah.
a question. We are on policy 7-57.
Yes, we are.
I just curious, about 2, under B, animals on school ground. And, 2A, have we had any incidents or requests for therapy pets or comfort pets in the school? How have we?
We had 2 this week for service dogs. Now, the therapy dogs are, we found a lot of schools invite people with therapy dogs in, so we had to make an exception for that. That's a little, because they're not assigned to one individual person.
Right.
So, on there, so we will allow them to come in, but I have Miss Booth and Miss Hall MacGyver are both were this weekend doing service dog procedures for them.
So we are getting requests, and we are considering this service pets for individual. What grade levels?
High school, we've definitely had some. We have one middle school, one one high school one. The ones you tend to see at elementary school tend to be people that want to tether a dog to an autistic child. Our rules do require that the person be able to control the animal. So the difference with service animals, because technically in Virginia you could still have a miniature horse, and it could qualify, is it has to be able to perform a service for you. It cannot be a comfort pet, it cannot be an emotional support pet, it has to function. So that's the question we're asking. But we also need to know that you can control the animal, because obviously we can't take responsibility for a 5-year-old dog and if the dog is really just there to keep your kid from running, then that creates a problem with the dog holding a running child back. It's a very, very tight procedure. If the dog is actually performing a service and you can manage the dog and you have a system for managing the dog, we pretty much have to approve that until the dog becomes a problem. We have several service dogs. They are generally not a problem. They're managed pretty well, but we do check that out because you also have to look into if the dog's going to go to the bathroom, do we have to have sprayed grounds? We have to watch roundworm, where they're going to go to the bathroom. We cannot prohibit somebody who has an allergy to a dog. We can't prohibit the dog coming in, but we then might have to move that child on there. Again, we have service animals. We have a couple staff members with them. They've really not been a problem for us.
All right, thank you. Okay, so may I have a motion, can I have a motion to stand to
So moved.
7:57?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Felton, seconded by Mr. Bowenstill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Policy 757 will go to the school board. All right, that completes all the policy. Ms. Linnetti, do you have a general assembly update?
I just want to tell you, there were, I believe, over 140 bills having to do with education this year, and we were kind of stuck with the General Assembly being as late as it was. We didn't want to necessarily implement some of them until we knew whether a thing was going to change, because often with the budget bills, things can get changed. So we are moving very fast on a lot of these bills. Some of them are going to regulation, some of them you're going to see it. So I'd like to say September is going to be a lighter document. It's probably not for you, because we're trying to catch up with all the policies and procedures. I will say, Mr. Delaney and Ms. Turnbull are getting a huge amount of them coming over. Detail stuff is coming through, but I will tell you, the General Assembly told the Virginia Department of Education we're going to come out with guidance, and they haven't. And we're getting ready to start school, and some of them are trapped trying to figure out what are we supposed to do and stay in compliance with the time period for notification. There are some really, really big bills and complicated procedures, so the schools are rushing. School administration's working really, really hard to get them. Some of them will be going into regulation, some will be coming up in policy. We are trying even if we haven't been able to get the policy to you, we're trying to implement what's required, but it was a huge year for education matters.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Chair Williams and Attorney Linnetti, I know we've made some great moves, or we received considerable amounts of money for the arm rails on the bus. And I know that has been profitable for the school board as well. But do we, or is it something we should think about making a policy for those arm rails? Or have we put into place a public service announcement about the school bus arm rails and the criteria that falls under? I've had a couple of calls, especially was mentioned too, that if the bus is, if it's a 4-lane highway, and the bus is on the other side, and you still go through.
You're starting that stop arm?
Stop arm.
With a $250 fine. I've
Yeah.
gotten those
I will
calls
tell you, as I mentioned before, my office ended up taking over that docket, so we are handling that docket. And so there have been some changes in the law on some of those areas. I'm not sure if we've recently done an update on it. We did last year when we got the new contract with Bus Patrol, and we went from having 200 buses to all 800 of them have them. I think we did some communication then. I'm not sure we've updated any communication since that time period. I will tell you, my office is handling all the appeals of that, so Ms. Hall McGyver and Ms. Cleveland are managing that docket. It is amazingly continues to be a large docket. You would think with time people would learn not to do this, but it continues to be a large docket for us.
But with that said, just like I said, are there public announcements indicating or telling people what the steps are and what to avoid and what not to avoid. Because when I get a call, see, I'm on the other side. This is 4 lane. I'm on the other side, and still I get a ticket for that as well. So the parameters, I just need to know: are we giving? This is what you will be charged with, and this is what happened. This is what you need to.
I talked to Ms. Livas about this a couple months ago, and I actually think I remember seeing a police officer standing by school buses. There was some kind of ad talking about this, because not only do you have that, but you have, and it's not our program, but the speed zones in the schools, that is controlled by the police department. And you have the flock kind of cameras that's also controlled by the police department. We don't control those. We are authorized to have the stop arm cameras. And I thought I saw an ad with a police officer, and it was running on, I don't know if it was our website somewhere, talking about bus safety and these kind of issues. But I did mention to Ms. Livas that might be something also to address.
One of the conversations we've had with Ms. Livas is the messaging going to families about how they contribute to the safety in the community for our schools. Not as much when they're in the school, it's what they can do outside, such as what the requirements are on the bus, how you're handling their, how they're behaving around bus stops, those type of things. So I know she had some things in the works, and similar to Mr. Linetti, I believe something went out on that, but we just need to confirm.
Yeah, and I
Because we
think-
wanted something on
yeah.
that end, and
I
it's
will
all
tell
of
you-
our responsibilities on student safety.
I'll tell you, Bus Patrols told us that while they worked hard to get the contract with us, they don't make a significant amount of money off of us. Although I will say we still have a lot of convictions for this. Virginia Beach, for the most part, they see it doing much better than most areas. They see far more violations in other cities, but we still have a significant docket of violators.
Yeah, I think the awareness piece, if you're on Northampton Northampton is sometimes 6 lanes by the 2 turn, going all the same direction. I'm not even talking. And so if the bus is over here because there's a few houses, and then you're way over here, you didn't even see the bus, and you
Right.
didn't stop, and you're getting
Right.
a $250 ticket,
Right.
and those kids don't even cross the street.
Right.
So I've had that call too, because I live close to Northampton. So I tell everybody, if you see a yellow bus, you just make sure that you stop wherever you are. But I think just the awareness of some
Absolutely.
people just don't realize that they say, well, the bus was so far over, but you gotta stop no matter what. But I agree.
I do.
And
I
the
think
awareness
we
piece.
should invest in a public service announcement, given the criteria, just like Miss Means was saying. Like what I said, the bus was in. I'm on the straight street, and the
Right.
bus is coming out.
Right.
The shoe's not getting out. It's coming out of the street. So I'm gonna get it. I didn't see that. I didn't see that stop arm. So
Absolutely. And some of those rules are established, you're correct, by DMV. It's been a long time since I've taken a driving test, but the rule of thumb was usually if there wasn't a permanent median down the middle of the road, no matter how many lanes, that you're required to stop.
Yeah.
So.
And that needs to be.
Watch
people
this,
need to
absolutely.
yeah,
So we
remind you of
have that noted, and maybe we can work very closely as well with the city on this, because I think it's safety for everyone.
is.
Because we've had, unfortunately, just as many walkers and people crossing the street also getting hit
Yeah.
by
Oh, yeah,
cars.
I mean, you gotta be
And
safe,
so,
yeah.
if nothing else, slow down. Our babies are returning to
Yes,
school, so
exactly.
please slow down. So we'll work on that.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. I do
Thank
The police
you.
department has, which I will note, you pay them, they don't do this for free for you, you pay them for this, but they have a set of officers who do, this is all they do. They'd probably be a great resource, because they can tell you what they're looking at. And I promise you, Bus Patrol loves their system so much, they would, if you ever want to see a demonstration of what it looks like on these cameras, they would be happy to show you, we get access to them. It's amazing how much these cameras pick up and how far out they can
Yeah.
monitor you
Right.
coming up, and it's very good. I mean, they're getting your place. So if you ever want to see a demonstration, they'd be happy to do it for you. But I think we have police officers who every day look through these things. They'd be happy to work with Ms. Livas on explaining those rules, what they're looking for a violation.
I would like to see a demonstration. I would. I would like to see that.
Set that up.
Yeah. All right. Any other general assembly updates? Just.
No, just
give
know
them-
you're going to be
just-
busy.
Just keep in mind that we have the 3 policies that we spent 2 hours on today, coming back the next meeting. So just making everybody
Some of the
aware that.
changes you're going to see are probably going to show up in regulations, so that, but we're just letting you know that things are changing. There was just a significant amount of activity for education this year.
Okay, yes. Okay, our next meeting is September 9th, and it is later at 3:30 because I will be teaching back in school. Yay! All right, so with that, I adjourn this meeting at 3:45. Thank you, everybody.